Hello, gang. I'm Jamie Hiles.
I'm Lydia Judy.
And I'm Derek Lemaster.
And this is Scream Bloody Movies. Today is June 30th, 2021, when we're recording this episode. And I hope you guys are going to have a nice 4th of July weekend. It'll be long past 4th of July when this episode airs, but salute to the States.
All 50 of them. We're looking at you, Hawaii.
Yes. Thank you for your service. All right. So we're going to start this episode like we start most episodes with the horror news. But before we do, how you guys doing? Everything good?
I'm doing good.
That's good to hear. Lydia, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm going to try to keep my energy up. I feel like I'm already sounding tired. I was up till 2:30 in the morning painting a giant mural, and I'm a little tired today.
Hey, you know what? That's great. It looks great. We just saw a picture of it. It looks fantastic. So, it'll be worth it for sure. Well, there's nothing new for me either, except that in 2 weeks' time, so by the time you guys are hearing this, we'll have shot the first 2 nights of our next short, Secret Admirer. So that's really exciting. That's exciting news, right, Derek?
Oh, yeah. It's real exciting.
It's a slasher movie, so it's right in our wheelhouse. We'll be ready to bring you the fun and the kills. So speaking of which, let's get to the horror news today. And the big news of the week, obviously, was the release of the Halloween Kills trailer, which we already have reviewed and have a mini-sode of. So we're not forgetting about Halloween Kills. We just already did it. Also today, they released the trailer for Don't Breathe 2. It came out today. Have you guys seen this yet?
Nope.
So we talked about it a couple weeks ago, and we talked about the kind of the plot, but the new plot synopsis is out. It says, several years after a home invasion of the first movie, with a blind man living in a quiet solace until his past sins catch up to him. The blind man has been hiding out for years in an isolated cabin and has taken in and raised a young orphaned girl from a house fire. Their quiet existence is shattered when a group of kidnappers show up and take the girl, forcing the blind man to leave his safe haven to save her. So I haven't watched the trailer either, but from what I've read, it definitely presents the blind man as the anti-hero. How do you guys feel about him being the new anti-hero of this series after some of the things he did in the last one?
I mean, it could just be that traditional story arc that a lot of characters have, like a redemption. So I wouldn't be shocked if he dies at the end of this because he's redeemed his sins. I mean, that I don't know that that's going to happen, but that's what it kind of reminds me of. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would venture he probably won't because then they can't make Don't Breathe 3.
There goes our money.
What are your thoughts, Lydia? Do you remember the first movie?
I barely remember it, honestly. It must have been late or something. I don't know. I might have to give it a rewatch.
I mean, the biggest problem for me was, he kidnapped a woman and inseminated her with a turkey baster. So that's pretty hard to come back from, I feel like. It is. Maybe a bridge too far, one would say.
One might say.
Up until the turkey bastering, I was on that guy's side. I was like, yeah, screw these thieves that broke into your house, man.
Yeah.
Show them what's what.
I'm gonna lie to you. I thought you were gonna start this off with more news of Toxic Avenger.
No, we haven't gotten any new news, man. We know we have everything we have. We have Peter Dinklage and Kevin Bacon and Elijah Wood and all the wild stuff that comes with it. So no new Toxic Avenger news this week. However, I'm not sure how you guys are going to feel about this one because I don't know how I feel about it either. But it was announced today that they are making a sequel to The Exorcist, produced by Blumhouse and David Gordon Green.
So when you say sequel, a sequel to the last one that they made, or a sequel to the original, or that's yet to be determined?
Well, let me tell you what it says here. I think it's going to pleasantly surprise all the skeptics out there. This is Jason Blum talking. We had a lot of skeptics about Halloween, and David turned them around, and I think he's going to turn it around with The Exorcist. The producer went on to say that many people have strong feelings about The Exorcist. 95% of the audience that will turn out for the new film won't have seen or heard about the original. Now, I don't think that's a quite accurate representation. I feel like most people have heard of The Exorcist. Maybe not everybody's seen it, but I would say most people have heard of The Exorcist. It's not like the Tool House Massacres or something, you know? It's not Sorority House Massacre. It's The Exorcist.
Mhm.
It's a pretty big property. Probably, besides Halloween, the biggest property in horror. He goes on to say, I want to make it a movie that works for both audiences. I want to make a movie for people that know and love the first Exorcist and are furious that we're doing this, but somehow drag themselves to the theater. I want to come out happy. I want to make a movie that people who've never heard of The Exorcist really enjoy. And I think David did that with Halloween. So really, we don't know too much except that it's being made, and that we don't know who the writer or any of the plot details for it. Just that it's going to be made. So I'm wondering if the way it kind of sounds like here is that David Gordon Green might be directing it as well as producing it. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I just I don't see why you go back and revisit some of these properties. Just come up with an original idea. My personal opinion, I think some things should just be kind of left alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, we want more Halloweens because you can just plug Michael Myers into any situation. We want more Freddys because you can do anything with Freddy. I mean, literally, it's whatever your imagination can conjure.
Mm-hmm.
We want more Jasons because they're fun.
Well, I think the thing that made this last Halloween work so well was the returning cast members that they got to come back. Jamie Lee Curtis, they got the original actor for Michael Myers.
Okay, so
a lot of the cops.
How would you guys feel if it was announced that Linda Blair was returning as Reagan?
Yeah, I don't think that would work. Well, maybe it would work.
I think,
don't know.
yeah. I would like to see where that story would go, because I think you've got a lot of opportunity there.
They kind of did that with the. Did you guys see the TV series that was on Fox a few years back?
Nope.
They didn't bring Linda Blair back, but they brought back Reagan, as played by Gina Davis, under a different name, and then you found out later it was Reagan. So, I mean, they kind of did that, but, I don't know, guys. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it's like anything. They'll either do a good job or they won't. So we'll just have to see, but I will I'll go see it.
Yeah, I'll see any good possession movie coming out. I like possession movies a lot. So
I do too. They're good, and when they're done right, they're great. So I also would enjoy a good possession movie. And The Exorcist is the best of those movies. It set the template.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, Exorcist 2, of course, was terrible. Exorcist 3 was fun. I really enjoy Exorcist 3. I think it's great. Exorcist the Beginning, not so good. I went to the movies and saw that. I remember it vividly. And one of my friends went with us, and she was terrified of it. I was like, really? All right. I mean, those CGI hyenas are terrifying.
Wait, what?
You don't remember the CGI hyenas?
Well, I never saw it.
Oh, you never
That
saw
one.
it?
No.
Okay. They attack this boy, and it's like when was that? 2005. So it was 2005 CGI. If that tells you anything. Moving on. Did you guys know? Speaking of sequels and remakes, they are making a new Firestarter.
I saw that.
Yeah. So they just announced that they cast Cindy Lemons is going to join the adaptation. So this new movie is basically, it's the plot. I mean, it's Firestarter. It's a young girl who develops psychokinetic abilities and is abducted by a secret government agency that wants to harness her powerful gift as a weapon. I mean, it's...
Was that Drew Barrymore who did that?
Correct. Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, what do you guys feel about just the idea of them making a new Firestarter? I don't think it's a terrible idea.
You know, Lydia, do you want to? I don't want to.
Yeah, I'm for it. I'll watch it.
Sorry, I didn't want to like jump in there if you had something.
No, you're good.
So I honestly think that this would be a good property to do this with, because I don't think that it's got the cult following that a lot of the other titles do, like your Exorcist, like your Halloween. So if you're going to do that, I mean, this would be a good one to do that, because you're introducing new material to a lot of people, not a reimagining or...
Yeah, I agree. It's not like one of Stephen King's most famous novels. I read somewhere recently, I don't remember where, and I don't remember who, but I think they're toying around with remaking Christine, which I'm not for. Christine is, I mean, I don't know how you could do better than the adaptation that we have with the combined talents of Stephen King and John Carpenter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a more famous story. But like Firestarter is a lesser story, you know. So I feel I would perfectly be fine with that. But then again, I also wasn't for remaking it, and that turned out to be pretty damn great. So you never really can tell, I guess.
That's true.
But they really nailed the cast, especially like as the kids, and then the transition of those kids to adults. Like, they really got that right, and that to me made all the difference.
Yeah, I think cast will be really important for Christine too. You know, I feel like a lot of the remakes are getting like models, you know, being put in to bring in people who want to look at pretty models, you know, and have like crushes on these movie stars. But it's really like, I don't need to look at some model to like the movie. I just want to see someone who can act well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially with, like, that was kind of one of the problems we had with The Fog last week, was it was very OC, right? I mean, it was the OC casting. It wasn't, Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis, these faces and people that feel real. It was, very OC-ified. And so I guess that if Christine, especially, because you have some really strong characterizations, Arnie has to go from that arc of nerdish to cool greaser, like he thinks he's cool at least.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Buddy you have to have the right guy to play Buddy, to be like that D-bag. And first of all, I mean, he's definitely got to look like he's 45, like he did in John Carpenter's. Very important to put the Travolta-looking guy in there.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, on horror movie news, I mean, that's really the big stuff. But real quick, I saw that they are releasing a Halloween pinball.
Oh,
so that would be fun.
What do you know what the dimensions of this pinball are?
Well, I think it's in 3 dimensions.
I meant measurements.
I know what you meant.
Smarty pants.
No, all we have so far is a really cool retro trailer that shows like the Halloween logo. And here's what it says. It says, finally, the iconic horror film that started it all, Spooky Pinball LLC and Compass International Pictures are bringing the 1978 classic, John Carpenter's Halloween, to Pinball World. More details coming soon.
All right, I gotta look this up.
So that's kind of what we know so far. Why are you thinking about picking one up, Derek?
Well, no, but if done right, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, if it's affordable,
I might do it.
I'd put one in my, I would say office, but then I wouldn't have room for anything else.
You should see my office.
But, we'll figure it out. But anyway, that's kind of the big horror news. Be sure to check out our Halloween Kills reaction. And that's about it for horror news. So let's move on to today's movie, which is a good one. And if you read the title of the episode, you already know that it's Chuck Russell's 1988 remake of The Blob. So, Lydia, is this the first time you've ever watched this movie?
I think it's the first time I watched this one. I watched the original, and I really loved that, so I knew I was gonna like this one, and I was shocked.
Hopefully in a good way.
In a good way. Very good way.
Yeah.
It's a little bit gorier.
Yeah, very much so.
Just a little.
Well, I mean, it's slightly gorier than the Steve McQueen 50s version, for sure. Derek, this is not at all your first time seeing this film.
Nope, not at all. By the way, when I told my wife, I'm going to watch The Blob, that's our movie this week, she was like, well, I've got that one on DVD. I'm like, what? And she's an old soul. And I was like, the one that's in black and white? She's like, yeah. I was like, no, we're not watching that one. we're kicking it 80s style. So, yeah, no, I
that's how we roll on Screen Bloody movies.
Yeah, I told my brother I was watching this, and he was like, no, the one that from when we were kids. And I was like, yeah. So he was also very excited.
Yeah, I grew up with Chuck Russell's Blob. It was one of those cable movies I watched. I think I rented it once when I was little. I saw the cover at the video store and was like, what is that?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the cover is brilliant, with the great practical effect of the guy stuck in the blob.
Mm.
And
you might want to explain video stores.
Okay, for our younger listeners, there was this building you could go into, and there was videos then on VHSs. Which, don't make me explain that. It's going to be another hour-long podcast.
Yeah.
And then it was a cable mainstay, so I watched it plenty of the times on cable throughout my adolescence, from kid to adolescent. So I've got a quite fondness for this movie as well. So, but I own it on Blu-ray. So this is I haven't seen it in a year, maybe 2 years. So this was a revisitation of it for sure. So we'll get started on this one and break it down. But first of all, it's directed by Chuck Russell. It's written by Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont, who, is the Stephen King maestro. Frank Darabont went on to direct The Mist, Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile, and created the Walking Dead TV series. Darabont's great, is what I'm saying. And he and Chuck Russell also wrote a movie, which we will eventually talk about, which is Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3.
Mm.
And Chuck Russell directed it. So, horror royalty is what we're dealing with here today, folks.
Oh, I think he lived up to it.
Yeah.
In the movie stars Kevin Dillon and Shawnee Smith. And by the way, can I just say, let's start with these actors before we get into it.
Wait. I want to start at the very beginning. Like,
okay.
I miss the intros to movies. Like when the TriStar horse came galloping
Yes.
upright and came over the star. I'm like, man, I miss those. All of the old ones.
Yeah, those were great. Now what we have are 47 before a movie starts. Little short, Harry and the Hendersons, and then it's like Blue Moon Jack and Harsfield Studios, and it's just like all these little, and they're all digital and such. But yeah, there's nothing like the TriStar logo or the classic Columbia logo, or even like when I watch a James Bond movie and the MGM Lion comes on, I'm like, yeah, now we're talking.
Yeah.
Now we're getting
Universal.
Yeah, the old Universal logo.
Yep.
Yeah, even the old Paramount card.
Yep.
That transitions to a mountain before Indiana Jones climbs it. So yeah, you're right. That is great. Let's talk about the actors a little bit before we start. What did you guys think of this cast?
I thought it was pretty good. I liked it. I thought they all did good in their roles.
Yeah, I personally love this cast. I think it's a very well cast movie, and not just our leads, but the little peripheral characters are great and well cast. I mean, you kind of get like a sympathy for the sheriff, for instance.
Oh yeah,
I love the sheriff.
I love the sheriff too. I have a notation. I'm a little sad, and we'll get to that.
Yes.
Really, I only had issues. I loved the cast as well. I thought all of them did a good job, except for two. There are only two that I would have swapped out. One is the deputy. He tried to be such a hard ass in this movie, but neither stature nor attitude really came. Actually, was he in RoboCop?
He was. He's one of the henchmen in RoboCop.
Yeah,
he's the one that gets the acid poured on him and gets obliterated by the car.
Yeah. If they would have swapped him out for someone maybe with just a bigger stature. He just I have a hard ass deputy. Should have gotten a stronger actor for that guy, but him and the preacher, I think.
Yeah, we'll get into the preacher. We'll get into the preacher when we start. But I've got to say, I love Shawnee Smith in this movie a lot. Mm-hmm. I think she as Meg is great. I think she is the perfect amount of vulnerability and toughness and humor. She kills it. I was like, damn, I wish Shawnee Smith was in more stuff. She's great in this film. And Kevin Dillon is awesome in this movie too, because Brian goes from this when you first meet him, you already know he has a heart of gold. Yeah. And then he just keeps showing it throughout the movie. And you're like, oh, this dude's awesome.
Oh man. He was well cast as the main lead, but dude, his hair, I couldn't get over his hair.
The 80s, baby.
I know it was just the style, 80s, but I felt like his hair was a character in and of itself. But
it was.
He was killing it for sure.
He was. Hey, would you say he's attractive, Lydia?
No.
Okay, so he doesn't hold a candle to Tom Atkins, is what we're saying.
Oh, not at all.
Okay, good.
Some guys got it. Some guys
I didn't think. Maybe what if Tom Atkins was the deputy? Wouldn't that have been a
yeah. Yeah, that would have been great. That would have definitely bumped it up a little bit.
We'll put him in every movie.
Yeah, we'll say that's the new game. Basically, every movie we do, we'll say which character should have been played by Tom Atkins.
Is he still alive?
Yeah, he is.
Man, if we ever get an opportunity, we're gonna put him in a movie somehow.
Yes, we will. We will. The first feature we make, we're gonna go to him and Bruce Campbell first.
Heck yeah.
All right. So the movie opens with,
Did you guys hear that?
What was that?
That was a firework right outside my window.
Wow.
Hopefully we don't get too much of that tonight.
It's always the worst, especially when you have dogs.
Yeah. I feel like you can really set the trend for a movie in either a good direction or a bad direction. And I loved the opening to this movie. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, discuss it.
Okay. So I loved how it started off really ominous, right? You have this empty town, empty parking lots. The town looked abandoned. And then that immediate transition, everybody's at the Friday night football game, right? It had that small town nostalgia that you look for in movies. I mean, it brought me back. We're from a really small town. And so the trend that it set in the beginning, I mean, it carried throughout the movie, but I thought it was really great.
Great tone setting it was, because it worked on two levels. First, it shows what we hear in dialogue, which is that the town is dying because there's not a lot of jobs and people are moving out. But it also shows that the community is tight, that the community that's left, right? And the opening football, this was an 80s horror cliche.
It was.
Main characters being in football games. I thought of two immediately. I thought of Christine, and I thought of Shocker.
Yep. That's immediately I thought of Shocker.
Yeah.
I even was going to look up the clip to see how closely it mirrored it, because it felt like I've seen this before.
Kind of similar. In Shocker, he runs into the goalpost and then falls over into the Gatorade table. On this, he gets... I wrote in my notes, classic Gatorade table knocking over. That's a staple in films. If there's football in a scene in a movie, somebody's getting knocked into a Gatorade table. Doesn't matter the genre.
Yep.
Just gonna happen. And it of course that happens, and then we meet what's the other character's name? Our fake lead.
Oh, her boyfriend. Well,
yeah,
she goes out with.
Yes.
Oh my gosh, was it Dan?
No, that would be Jacob and Hookman.
Was it not Dan? Was it Brian?
Brian is our main character. It's Paul Taylor.
Paul, dang it.
So we meet Paul, and Paul's set up kind of as our leading man. And actually, Paul is great because he's not like a douchebag. He's not sleazy. Mm-hmm. He's literally a great guy.
Yeah.
Who has a crush on this pretty cheerleader, our lead, Meg. And so, he falls into the Gatorade table. She asks him out. He asked her out that whole little bit. And so we get set up with them going on their first date. So that's their catalyst. And then we're introduced to Brian setting up his motorcycle jump.
Yeah.
And I love the introduction to this character. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I loved it too. As a first time watching this, I was sitting there with Jake and I was like, he's not going to do it. And he turns around and I'm like, oh, he's just leaving. I literally said out loud, oh no, he's just going to leave. I was so wrong.
I am not going to kid you. This took me back to an episode of Silicon Valley on HBO. I was this close to breaking out like some old school geometry, being like, I wonder how much that bike weighs. That doesn't look like the correct angle. I don't think he's going to make it. Anyway, I thought it did a good job of setting up his character.
Well, it sets up a payoff later. Sure does. He doesn't make the jump the first time. He bails so he can make the jump.
Sputters.
Yeah, and so he makes the jump when it matters. And of course, then we're introduced to the kind of homeless character, who is hanging out with his dog and clapping at Evel Knievel over here.
Yeah,
that was a really cute scene. Like he wasn't even mad that guy was clapping.
No, and that's what greatly sets up his character. You see it right there when he smiles at the guy, and he's just like, this guy here.
Like, he knew that was probably like great entertainment for that guy.
Yeah.
He was picking up his beer can that he threw.
Adding it to his pile.
And even though it was a very small scene with that old man, I mean, and he comes back later, obviously he's kind of a crucial character, but feeling for a character is a great attachment. And you really got a good sense that this was a nice guy type thing. So later on, it makes you feel. For me, it made me feel even worse whenever
whenever
it happened.
Bites the big one.
Yeah.
I wrote in my notes that I like the intercutting between Brian's bike jump attempt and the football game.
Yeah.
So you see they're cheering. Brian's going. They're cheering. It's kind of like the cross-cutting of it, and then it just completely fails.
Yeah. There's another great cut in this movie that I'll talk about later. But yeah, they did a good job of interweaving different scenes with one another.
So we move along to he goes and gets a ratchet set from his boss and his friend Moss, right? Which I wrote in my notes. Moss is a badass. So he's introduced. We get introduced to Moss, who's this kind of he's a mechanic, and he gives him this ratchet set that is actually incredibly crucial to this movie. This ratchet is more useful than a Swiss Army knife, guys. He uses it so many times to get out of scrapes. It cracks me up.
Hey, MacGyver, that stuff.
Yeah. So after we're introduced to Moss and what have you, we also get an interaction between he and the sheriff, where we realize that Brian has been in trouble with the law. He's got a juvie record, essentially, and he's just turned 18. So, the sheriff says something about, basically no more juvie hall for you.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the sheriff, he has a cute little interaction with the diner woman.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Yeah.
Another thing of like making you care for people that you have just met on screen.
Yeah. Their little interaction is great. It's like this, that it makes you feel for him immediately. You feel for him because of his nerves. You feel for her for being like just taken aback by the sheriff wanting to go out with her, and you're like, oh, I hope it works out for these kids. Luckily, they end up together in the end.
Yeah. It's like they're one.
Oh my god.
One and the same.
One and the same.
So then we get the crash of the comet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we get our first little glimpse of the Blob. And it's very small. And I love the lighting in this movie.
Oh, yeah.
And the lighting in the woods, particularly.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bunch of unmotivated, beautiful light coming through the trees, which just sets this spooky tone. And then you have like a little bit of fog, and you're just like, oh, yes, we're in the thick of a horror movie. I love it. So I
got a quick comment.
Yeah.
Did you guys notice that he was using his cast iron pan as a shoe?
Yeah. Well, he was
to crush those
cans.
cans.
Yeah,
I know. Like that's kind of genius, actually.
It's a great character trait. It's a great character trait.
He's very thrifty.
The workout you'd get from doing that.
Yeah.
He has huge calves.
Skillets are.
The problem was he didn't have two cast irons, so that's why he couldn't outrun the Blob. He was only kind of running in a circle.
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh.
So the Blob attaches to this guy's hand.
Yeah. And
we have a great scene that sets up Paul's douchebag friend, right? When they're in the drugstore. What do you guys think of the drugstore scene?
It's my favorite scene. It has a great payoff.
It does.
The best payoff. It was so good. I put a smiley face next to my note for it.
What do you think of the drugstore scene, Leah?
I was just trying to look up. Sorry, I was like kind of distracted. I'm looking up the special effects team that did the Blob. Because I just had to know.
Oh yeah, we'll get to them for sure.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Which scene are we talking about here?
The drugstore scene. With Brian and his D-bag friend.
The red.
Oh yes, I loved it. I loved that whole scene. I thought that was really great. Just like, I don't know, and then it pays off again in like another,
Yeah, it's a great setup and payoff.
Yeah,
because there's multiple punchlines. There's the punchline of the actual drugstore when he says, "Come on, I can't leave this girl waiting," and he looks back at the camera and looks back at him like, "This guy."
Yeah.
So there's the one, and the pharmacist is all like, and there's of course the added joke of the preacher being there, and and then when Paul goes to meet Meg's family, and he's introduced, and the father is the same guy, and he says, ribbed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I loved it.
Oh, it's so good.
Yeah,
Oh my
one of
gosh.
my favorite jokes. I loved it.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
Before we get past it, so the other transition that I thought was really like perfect in this movie was from the very first attack of the Blob, right, to the kid slurping the Jello.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Great
thought
shot.
that was like
Great
spot
match cut.
on.
Yeah, great match cut. Speaking of the kid, we're introduced to Meg's younger brother and his best friend.
Expendable best friend,
who are on their way to basically they're wanting to go see a horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of that? It
I
was like
didn't write it down. Yeah, Garden Massacre or something. Yeah.
Garden Tool Massacre.
Yeah. Yes. So we're introduced to her little brother and their friend. I don't remember what the friend's name is. But we're introduced to these characters, and they're going to see Garden Tool Massacre. And I wrote in my notes that when we get to the theater later, the scene in the theater, I wrote in my notes that that is actually Derek and I when we were that age.
Mm.
Oh yeah, dude, I remember pulling something like that on my mom.
Yeah. And that's the way.
Did you wear your headphones in the theater?
No, did not do that. Old boy was obsessed with his headphones, wasn't he?
Yeah.
He just could not let it go. But yeah. So we're introduced to these characters, so that way they come back later in the theater. And then we get to them on their date and whatever, which is interrupted by the Can Man, who Paul just hits. He's lucky. She's lucky that Ryan Phillippe wasn't driving that car, because he would have just said, let's just dump him in the river and we're out of here.
That is true.
And then, of course, Brian sees him right before that. He pops out of the woods trying to chop off his own hand with an axe because the blob's attached to it. And
that was a really good scene where he bam, right into his arm, and then immediately the blob covers it up.
Yeah, suctions it up. It's great. So now our three central characters, what we think are going to be our three central characters, are taken to the hospital. And this is where the shit goes down. So the hospital scene is special effects magic.
Oh, yeah.
Lydia, so this is your first time seeing it. So what was your reaction when you saw all the shit that goes down here? So let's start with the Can Man's half body.
Yeah. So the body under the sheet is kind of moving in a weird way. So he's like, what's going on? And he walks in, lifts it up. And the eyes being completely white like that was so good. I don't know. Yeah. I wasn't expecting it. And then the amount of gore that you see after that is very shocking, which it was a pleasant surprise. I feel like I haven't seen a lot of that lately, and I needed it.
Were you surprised that Paul dies?
I was. Yeah. I was like, oh, he was gone. That happened, and I was I was definitely surprised by that.
And what did you think of his actual death? Paul's death by Blob.
It was so scary. I think if I would have seen this when I was younger, I probably would have had nightmares over that.
Yeah, the special effect of Paul getting blobified is amazing. The way his skin's pulled off, the way he kind of melts down, it's just chef's kiss.
Yeah, well, that actor went for it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and Shawnee delivers the goods of the terror of watching this guy you're going on a date with getting melted in front of your face.
Yeah, and his arm. She pulled his arm off.
Pulled his arm right off. Derek, I don't know if you remember the first time you saw this, but how did you feel about it this time?
Impressed. It is so impressive to see what they could do with actual practical effects. compared to what they do with the CGI. I mean, sometimes CGI really takes away from a movie, but they absolutely nailed it. Everything you guys said was spot on. And so, yeah, I mean, it amazes me because you analyze a movie now, right? Especially us having experience in making movies, and you're just like, I wonder how the hell they did that. Like, it was so good. And when it dropped down from the bottom or from the ceiling, I'm pretty sure they shot that in reverse.
Yeah.
Because it went up. I'm sorry, it went up and then over
Yeah.
the top of him and then dropped down. But it was so impressive to see what they did for a 1988 movie.
I love that's such a great scare too, because I love how it just the door moves and it's there, and you're just like, because that's the first time you actually see the blob too. I mean, you see the little thing in his hands, but that's the first time you see it, and and it's like a real effect. It's there, and you can like almost feel it. You know, it's like gack or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's such a great scene. What always made me laugh though is is how he how the police immediately just are like, oh, well, this guy's completely melted and this dude's cut in half. You knew probably did it, Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're not having anything to do with the story that this girl told them. Even though, like, what you see as what's left of the carnage would make you wonder, like, I wonder what happened here.
Yeah, Deputy Hardass, as you labeled him,
That's
is all about like, it's that Brian. I know it's that.
I know, right?
I know it's Flag. He's no good. He's a psychopath. And the sheriff's like, yeah, I want to nail him too, but I'm down there. Not Tom Atkins. You need to slow your roll.
I don't want to get political on this, but I did notice that they slipped in, even in the 80s, they were still like fighting for Medicare for all. Like when they were trying to admit that guy, does he have Blue Cross?
That's what I was going to say. Like, that's probably one of the scarier parts of like just the underlying like dialogue is like they didn't want to help that guy at all. Like they did not care.
Yeah.
No, and this
didn't have health insurance, man.
No. He didn't have a house. He didn't have a shoe.
Yeah, he didn't have a shoe. Like he did have a shoe. It was made of cast iron.
What are you saying, Lydia?
He might have had health insurance, but they didn't know him. You know, like they were just like, he needs help. Like, who cares?
Yeah. I'm wondering if Ryan Phillippe's character in I Know What You Did Last Summer saw this movie and said, that's too much of a hassle. Let's throw him into the river.
Do you realize the paperwork we're going to have to fill out?
I watched Russell and Darabont's 88 Blob, and no, thank you.
Yeah, I want no part of that.
So then let him come back and kill me. So then we get one of my other favorite scenes. We get good old date rape friend.
Oh my God.
Good old date rape Scotty. This scene is something else, guys.
Many levels. It's got many levels.
Lydia, since this is your first time watching this, explain to me your feelings watching Date Rape Scotty.
Uncomfortable. Like, I looked over at Jake and he was like visibly uncomfortable, and I asked him, I was like, how are you feeling over there? And he's like, I feel so uncomfortable right now. But I have to say the trunk of that car makes me kind of jealous.
Yeah. Right? Liquor store trunk is what that guy.
Yeah.
that blender, that like drink blender, I want one so bad.
Yeah.
My favorite detail is that he has like a box full of those rings that he gave her. It's
how did he get those? And like those, I said to Jake, I was like, how did he get all those? Those are expensive rings.
I don't think they are. I think they're just like cheap, expensive looking rings.
Oh, there's knockoff. Well, they were class rings though.
Yeah. He probably subscribes to Predators R Us, and they've got a special on fake rings.
Yeah, or like passed down from like a creepy uncle or something.
His
Like
dad.
someone in his family must have like been.
Yeah.
Because he was like, he had it ready to go. He had his whole bar, he had his little drink mixer, like you guys were saying. He had his little box of rings. This is this guy's first rodeo.
Oh,
And
not at all.
she immediately passes out when he comes back after she tells him she doesn't want any more drinks.
Yeah.
He's like, "Oh no, you need more drinks."
Do you think he drugged her?
Probably.
Oh, I think he definitely. I mean, I don't know if he drugged her per se, or just poured a shitload of alcohol into her cup.
Yeah.
So
I was wondering that because she just like fell asleep.
Would you like
Well,
some fruit punch?
she also was kind of falling asleep, and then she got blobified, of course.
Yeah.
In the meantime.
That's right. That's probably what it was. Because he didn't seem like, he was a creep, but like I didn't get the vibe that he drugged her.
No, I think he was trying to get her drunk enough to sleep with her for sure.
Yeah.
Which is not okay. Not okay. And it's still date rape. And then he, when she's passed out, then it goes to just straight rape. So, of course, he starts sexually assaulting her. And this little comic scene where he's unbuttoning her blouse.
Yeah.
And then he, feels her up. And then he gets what's coming to him when her whole body opens up and her face sinks in. What did you think of that effect?
That was probably the weirdest effect, I think.
It was, but it's so cool.
It's pretty cool, but I think that's the weirdest one for me.
Ate her from the inside.
Yeah, just sucked her out and then takes him out and he kicks the glass open. I love that scene.
Yeah.
All the deaths in this movie are just A+. I mean,
yeah, I did have a note: death of a sex predator.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes. Where is it? Date rape. Date rape Scotty. Is what I wrote.
Rape Scotty, yeah.
And then I wrote practical blob for the win, because when the blob is moving away and through the thing, it looks so good.
Mm-hmm.
It's like just a practical effect. It looks phenomenal. And then, of course, the deputies, after they let Ryan go, after they realize that, well, after the sheriff is like, I mean, we don't have any evidence. This guy has no blood on him.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Let him go. And he's like, I strongly object. And
duly
he
noted.
Says, yeah, something like that. Duly noted. Let him loose.
Yeah. Good thing I'm the sheriff and you're the deputy.
Yeah.
Now go take some steroids and.
Is that when he gets in his face?
Yeah, and he licks him.
Oh my god! Yeah. I lost my mind.
So, Jamie, you have a degree in criminal justice. Would that then become assault?
It's 100% assault. Yeah, it's 100% assault.
So but they could have locked him up for that.
It was the 80s, and they didn't care about the assault. They probably didn't even think about it. They thought it was a cool character trait for him to do. But yeah, I mean, if you lick somebody, that's assault. If you spit on somebody, it's called simple assault. It's a misdemeanor. Yeah. It's not like a, you're not going to go to jail for it necessarily. It's a misdemeanor. Yeah. So it wouldn't have probably done him much good in the case that they're working on anyway. Give him a fine, essentially.
I just got to say, right after we watched this, I put on the original Blob and just had it on. I was like super tired, so I just we had it on. It was free, and they're like at the police station at that scene where like Steve McQueen's character is like, you gotta listen, and Jake was like, lick him in the face. I died laughing.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. Not legal advice. Yeah. But if it's not getting your face, do not lick his face.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't do that. Not legal advice, but just saying. Well,
Jake's reaction to seeing him like in his face, Jake was like, I would headbutt him,
yeah.
And then he got licked, and Jake was like, me and him both lost it. We were like, oh my god,
that's much better.
Yeah, it's way better of a choice.
So I get some the next scene with Meg, I get some like serious Nightmare on Elm Street vibes for sure, right? I mean, this came out a year after Dream Child. So I think they were still kind of in that space. Her parents give her a sleeping pill. to knock her out. You know,
Yeah.
and she fakes the sleeping pill and lays it down, and I could just almost hear do 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 do.
It kind of does fit since her dad is a pharmacist, it seems. So, like, why they would have that
Oh yeah, absolutely.
potentially on handy. But yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from.
But it's the
I like
parents, and I mean, these
connection, yeah.
parents are opposite of Elm Street parents. These are
Hey,
great
man.
parents.
When
These are great
Clark,
parents.
when Clark has trouble sleeping, I slip him some of Grandpa's cough syrup. So I am just kidding. For anyone out there who does listen to this, I do not drug my child.
Oh my God!
It's always like they're always like, "Oh, good job, sweetie. Good job." Like you just saw someone get dissolved and you accidentally ripped their arm off, and they're like, "Oh, just go to sleep. It's fine.
You're
Your
safe
trauma.
now.
Yeah,
Let's
like
suppress your trauma.
no. Why
Yeah.
do people always want you to just go straight to sleep in that
I
situation?
guess they think that that's the way to heal. Not like you're going to have horrible night terrors, by the way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because every time you close your eyes, you can see you ripping off the dude's arm. So
I was in a car accident, man, and like for the next 6 months, every time I looked in the rearview mirror, I had like, I would clinch. I can't imagine every time I'd shake somebody's hand. Is it gonna come off this time? I don't know.
thankfully, COVID's hopefully put a stop to handshaking, so we won't have that fear anymore.
It's the bow. See, now it's the bow. Been ushered in.
So she shows up at the police station to bail Brian out ostensibly, and he's already out, and he's like thinks she's cute and he appreciates her help, and he tells her, "I really do appreciate it, but I don't know what's going on. I've got to get some food," and she follows him into the diner, and there's a great Brian has a heart of gold moment in that diner, where she starts to lose it, and he. What did you see? And she tells him, and then he says, you're on drugs essentially, and
Yeah.
she loses it, says something about shit. Oh, you're full of shit and everything, and then he has this turnaround where he's like, hey, don't cry, everything's gonna be okay. Eat some of this food, it'll make you feel better. And he says, unbelievable. I never heard you say shit before. How'd that feel for you?
Yeah, she just starts to laugh.
Yeah, just such a great I love that character. What a great character. Good writing for that character. Which leads us to the next Blob attack, which is in the running for one of the best kills in the movie, in my opinion.
I agree.
The cook of the diner is this.
Yes.
So there's a clog, and Fran, who's our waitress, who's also very sweet, by the way. I love that we kind of get background that she's kind of been taking care of Brian by giving him food and stuff, and they have this kind of relationship. It really fleshes her out, so when she dies in 5 minutes, you really feel bad about it. And there's a clog, so the cook tries to get this clog out, and there's a great tension building because the blob's coming up out of that sink. There's just no doubt that the blob's coming out of the sink. But he makes you wait the right amount of time that you're thinking the beat's going to happen, and then it happens a beat later.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen this movie multiple times. I think a dozen times probably. And I forgot the timing of that jump scare. I actually jumped a little bit when it came out. Mainly because I was leaning in looking at the slime on his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And the stuff, and you see the acid, and I was like, what are they using? What did they put on his hands? Production wise, what did they put on his hands? And that pops out. Lydia, again, this is your first time. What did you think of this kill?
I really loved it. I loved his character. I named him George the Plumber Cook. And I really just like to imagine that when he got the role, he was like, yes, I got the role for this movie, The Blob. And he goes home and tells his family, and they're like, oh, what's your role? He's like, I'm a cook, but I gotta plumb the sink. I just use a plumber, a plunger. That's my only, that's my role in this movie.
And I get sucked into the sink.
Plunger cook. Yeah, and then he gets sucked into the sink, which was a really cool effect.
Yeah, I love that we see the pipe expand when he goes down. I love that. So Looney Tunes and excellent. And of course, he crushes up, and there's blood everywhere. Great
Yeah,
stuff.
Mhm.
it was pretty cool. I still don't know how they did that.
No, that's a great effect. That's some great stuff. Derek, this is one of your favorite kills?
Oh yeah, by far. It's just genius. And to Lydia's point, like how did they do that? But yeah, I liked it a lot.
And then, of course, we get her death soon after. Our leads run into the freezer.
Wait,
Uh,
I have a question about this. I must have like looked down at my phone or something because I did not see Herb die.
Oh,
yeah, you do.
really?
You didn't. You missed her death.
Herb's death I did, not the lady's death. I saw like the when I realized that Herb had died was whenever she was about to die and she saw his face.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
didn't see
window.
her death.
it doesn't show his.
No. I wrote that. That's one of the things that I was disappointed in, that we didn't see Herb's death.
Okay, then that makes sense. I'm glad I
Yeah.
just,
I thought you said her. I didn't know you said Herb.
Yeah.
No, we don't see Herb die, and that's one of the things that kind of I wish that they would have. Maybe they did shoot it. I don't know, and it just didn't make the cut. But I thought it kind of felt like I was robbed out of seeing, especially since I liked that character. And then we get just him slammed up against the phone booth, which, by the way, the phone booth death is also a great one.
Yeah, it really
That's
is.
my favorite, I think.
The claustrophobia.
I thought it was kind of shocking to see him there because you're like, oh, he's going to come, like, she's going to call him, he's going to come save the day. And then he's just like there and he looks terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they cut it, man.
Yeah.
Well, because the last time you see him, he's about ready to leave the police station and
to go to
I
the
gotta
diner.
go check on a friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you see him, and I'm sure that she's trying to get a hold of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
At that time, she's trying to get through to the police station. Where's Herb? And that maybe that's why they cut it, because it was very like literally in your face. It's plastered against the side of it.
It's a good suspense scene because you're like, to your point, Lydia. You were expecting him to show up and save the day, and instead he's dead. So that's probably why it is. And since Derek and I have seen this movie so many times, I didn't think of it that way. I just was like, I wish we would have got to see that guy die.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does definitely look terrifying when he smacks up against the thing. And I love the claustrophobic, you just so claustrophobic where the whole phone booth is just engulfed in the blob.
Yeah. Well, and
when it caves in, that is so crazy.
Oh yeah, that effect is so good. Visceral.
I think like you can tell it's a dummy, but it looks really good. Like her hair is like exactly her hair. And
it's the shot is so quick.
Yeah.
That it works perfectly. It blends, it matches perfectly.
And it's jarring, and it's just like you feel it and you're like, oh my god, it's really good scare.
Yeah, and exactly. You feel it because you feel like the impact of the glass breaking in on her.
Yeah.
And then she's engulfed in the acid of the blob.
I have no idea how they did that either.
Yeah, great stuff.
I want to peel the onion back one more layer on this because, like, just with this epiphany, I feel like I have a better appreciation for this scene, especially from her perspective. Because at that point, I feel like she probably still has some hope that, he's a police officer. He likes me. He's going to come and save me. And that realization she must feel when she sees his face on the wall or on the glass dead. I mean, from her perspective, she's got to think, well, there's no way I'm going to survive this.
Yeah. Hopelessness.
Yeah. I'm glad we talked through this because that actually gives me a better appreciation for this.
And
scene.
like, really what's sad is like, she only made like $1.25 all day.
Insult to injury.
Listen, she gave deadbeat Brian free food.
I know. She's so sweet for doing that.
It's on the house.
I want to know, they must have known each other and like been cool with each other because he like eats there occasionally.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is that she kind of feels a motherly instinct towards him.
Yeah.
So she kind of tries to steer him right and take care of him.
Yeah.
So it's a great little backstory for him. So our leads, Brian and Meg, lock themselves in the freezer and they find out the Blob's weakness. which is ice and cold. It doesn't like ice and cold. And then we get a random scene of the preacher seeing the blob go down into the sewers, which I've got to say, we'll get into the preacher later, but the preacher is my least favorite character in this movie. And we'll discuss him at length at the end when we get to his big scene. Is that another firework?
Yep.
Oh man!
Right, literally right outside my window.
That one was big.
Right next to me. Did you see the flash?
I did.
Like, we have a designated day to do that.
Yeah.
Come on, man.
It's almost like they created a holiday just for it.
I know,
my
but we have
dog
a
is right here
3-year-old.
too.
Aw.
Come here.
Yeah, like my son, every year when he was a baby and his first 4th of July,
Let me see.
not to get too sidetracked, but whenever they started like letting fireworks off on like the 27th and the 28th, I'm like, really, people, I will come out there. I'm a new parent and I want some sleep, damn it.
Definitely.
Anyway.
So I also wrote in my notes that Shawnee was killing it in the diner. Her performance in the diner is great. She goes through so many emotions, you know. And I love when she calls him out in the shit, and she goes to the door and she tries to leave, and then he talks her back, and then he, you know, they have that little dialogue. Then she laughs. It's just a great performance. It like really endears you to her character. She's not some dumb cheerleader stereotype. She is a smart, resourceful woman. And so then we, of course, they arrive to the police station, find out that everybody's at the woods. So they go and they're like, that's where it started. You know, the room where it happened. And they take off there. And that's where we meet Dr. Meadows, who I said, by the way, now if they remade this movie, would be played by Morgan Freeman.
He couldn't be played by Morgan Freeman. He's already played that character in a movie.
Yeah, a Dreamcatcher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I like where you're going with that, though. I see it.
Yeah, I mean, he's like, Morgan Freeman probably would have been a little nicer.
Yeah.
Does it mean... So I've got to ask you, Lydia, this is your first time watching this. When you meet Dr. Meadows, do you automatically know he's the bad guy?
No, I thought, I was like, oh, this guy is like really like jolly and like way too nice to be a bad guy. And then, you know, but I mean, yeah, my first instinct was like, I like that guy. He's like friendly and nice. And I thought it was jolly, but like the suit, you're like, he can't be, why is he so nice? You know, there's something too nice about him.
The lighting helps too, because he's like lit from underneath with the suit. So he's all like, you guys are my patients.
Yeah.
And so I love that we get that little, we're introduced. I love the introduction to the base because it gives you a fake out because you think you're experiencing, did you think you were experiencing a spaceship?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't feel that.
Oh, the first time when I was a kid and we see the lights and we see like the wind, I guess it's the Spielberg in me. I was like, oh, it's a spacecraft. And then, you know, we pan over and we see that it's the army and what have you. And they're kind of doing cleanup. And then they forcibly take our leads back to town because, you know, they need to make sure everything's quarantined and all this stuff.
Yep. I got one note here.
Uh-huh.
So I would have definitely questioned his credentials when he gave that ridiculous extinction story of the dinosaurs. Like, oh, how do you think that the dinosaurs died? Well, it didn't die of a blob that came from outer space. But I just because
that would be here and we wouldn't.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where did it go? But yeah, that side story about how do you think the dinosaurs died? It was just kind of weird.
It'd been great if that was. We need to do a cut where that's intercut with Mr. DNA talking about how dinosaurs are created from Jurassic Park.
Dino DNA.
Yeah, Dino DNA. Mr. DNA is a great character.
Love him.
Didn't they bring him? Was he in Jurassic World? I'm wanting to say he's in Jurassic World, right?
Mm.
I haven't seen it in a while, but I think he was, because I think I remember in the theater going, Mr. DNA. It's a second film appearance.
You guys remember Pencil from the old Microsoft Word program?
Oh yeah,
Or no, it's Paperclip.
Paperclip.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway.
He's very helpful, that Paperclip.
Hey, he was.
So we are introduced to the army, and then they're taken away. And Brian pulls out his helpful tool, which is the damn ratchet that he put in his jacket after he fixed his motorcycle. And he uses it to break out of the van. And, that he has this conversation with Meg. And rightfully, he's like, hey, I don't believe that guy's dinosaur story. We gotta get out of here.
Exactly. He did show up for that day of history class.
I would have been with her, and I would have just been like, oh, yeah, let's go.
I was torn between this because I was like, I mean, I could see both ways. He is an outsider, so he's like, I just want to live. Let's go do our thing. Let's blow town. And I could see her saying, I don't know if I necessarily trust these guys, but my family is back that way. So I need to get to my family. So I see their philosophy differences and why they each have them.
Yeah.
Brian's been on his own for, it sounds like, most of his life. From the backstory we got, his mom's an alcoholic, and he never knew his dad. So he's kind of been raising himself, which is probably why he's been in trouble. And she has great parents, which we've established. I think her parents are one of the better parents in horror movies because they really care. They genuinely care.
Dude, her dad is a hard ass.
Yeah.
In this movie.
I love her dad. So when she arrives back into town and she's immediately finds out that her brother and expendable best friend are at the movies because they're not with him. And the mom says, oh, they went and saw that movie. And immediately dad's like, you didn't tell me about a movie. Such a Midwestern dad thing to say.
Oh my god!
And then he gets in army guy's face and he's like, I pay my taxes. I pay your salary.
Which is an argument that some people use in today's society. But that's when I wrote down her dad is a badass, man, because that really struck me as like, yeah, he's not even afraid to get into this army guy's face.
No, he's not. He probably was just thinking this army guy's trying to get some rib condoms. So he's not having it.
Yeah.
Did you guys recognize him from any other movies?
He's in a ton of movies. Yeah.
I grew up watching Sandlot religiously.
Yes. Heroes live forever, but legends never die.
Yeah. No, he's been in a ton of movies.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. He's the babe, man.
Yeah.
The great Bambino.
Exactly.
Heroes get remembered, legends never die. That's it, right? That's the quote.
Yeah.
He was a remembered kid, but legends never die.
Yeah.
So
good. Such a good one. Yeah. We had a little moment where we all reflected on how good the Sandlot is in the middle of our room. We're like, ah.
Yeah, some movies transcend.
So after the babe yells at the army guy, Meg heads to the theater, and we get this one of my favorite scenes in this movie. I love the entire theater scene. Yeah. The whole sequence is awesome because I love seeing the projectionist in the projector booth with the old film reels.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing the terrible slasher movie on the screen, which is 100% a movie that we would have went and seen, Derek. No question.
No question.
And I love the terrible acting and terrible dialogue. It's a little late to be trimming hedges.
That was so funny.
Hey, wait a minute. God. It's not even hockey season.
Hockey season. Oh my god. He just looks up. The video of it is so hilarious. The killer just he's
just got his head down trimming.
Maybe this was part of the Greenskeeper
oh my god.
franchise.
The best
Anyway.
part is the best part is the terrible patron behind the kid. It's just constantly like, "Who watch this? This is what happens next." I would have.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I would have flipped out on that guy too if I was a kid.
I think it's great because it's like if you watch it in a movie theater, and it's like there's always that like person that just has to say something about everything.
Yeah, it's the worst. I hate those guys. If you're listening, you know who you are out there, Kevin. You need to shut your mouth at the movie theater. But
you remember that this happened to you and me. You remember that time we went to the movies and that guy like turned around and said something to us about kicking a seat?
yes, we went and saw Die Hard 4 at midnight, and I crossed my legs and my foot accidentally grazed the back of this guy's seat. And he turned around and he looks at me and he goes, "Is there going to be a problem?"
Oh.
And Derek leans over beside me with this tough guy face and says, this is a direct quote. He says, "I assure you it will not."
That's amazing.
I was like, "Thanks, Derek." He's grabbing my back. You sure showed him. He's like, "The professor here told me to be quiet, so I will."
Yeah. Good old days.
So so then we're introduced to the projectionist, and he's in the booth and he's doing his thing. And
it's hot in there. There's no air conditioning.
No air conditioning. I just love. Don't you miss film reels?
Yeah.
I mean, just the whole. I could just smell the movie theater from when I was a kid with the actual film reels, and feel the texture in the seat and the sticky ground and just all of it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But it's just so perfect. It's going to the movies was a religious experience for me personally. I loved it so much. So seeing that just brought back all of that to me, and I was like, "Oh my god, I can't wait to go to the movies again." But I do wish it was like that still. Yeah. And so when the Blob takes over, dude, that guy's death is great.
It really is. I love the play on the yo-yo, man.
Yeah.
That was genius.
Lydia, this is your first time seeing this movie. What did you think of this death?
That was really cool. Yeah, the yo-yo and like the way they shot that was so crazy. Like the angles, like they gave like the perspective from like the ceiling and the yo-yo coming down and the tentacles of the Blob, like that was so cool.
Yeah, loved it. I forgot about that. Was one I forgot about. Like I forgot how that death actually occurred. I knew he was going to die, and then when I was like, "Oh yeah, the yo-yo!" Like what a great, cool scene. And then of course, it takes over and the screen. The film burns out, and then the screen gets covered in Blob. Right, like the movie screen that they're watching before the Blob breaks out. I wrote in my notes that the theater scene would have killed in the theater. I would have loved to have seen this in a theater.
Yeah.
I bet you that scene played like gangbusters. Can you guys imagine being in the movie theater, watching this movie, and that scene happens, and you're just like looking back?
Yeah. Is that guy still up there?
Oh, man. Especially as a young kid, I would have loved that so much.
Yep.
Great scene. Great scene.
It was a good scene.
I wrote a note that so the reason that they're there is because the expendable best friend's brother works as an usher.
Yep.
And while I was watching it, I was thinking, man, that brother is there. Does he die too? Do those poor parents lose 2 children in one night? And they don't. The older brother does not die.
Yeah.
So they showed us.
That we see. But
yeah, that we see. I mean, we don't at least see him die. But he does go and talk to the military and tell them that they're in the sewer. So we know he escapes the theater. And so this sewer chase occurs. And this sewer chase is awesome. Lydia, were you shocked when little Billy, or whatever his name is, bites it?
Yeah, it was. I was like, he what happens? He like goes under, like he gets pulled, and I was like, oh well, I guess he's gone. I thought he was gonna make it, and then she jumps in after him, and I was like, she's about to go get him and pull him out. I was like, how's that gonna work? That's insane. That's never gonna work. And then she comes back up and he's not there, and I was like, oh man, I thought she was like gonna save him for a second.
Yeah, they do a great job of building this tension. And when he goes, it like shocks you. You're like, oh, so we're killing kids. Okay.
Yeah.
When I was a little kid, this messed me up because kids never die in horror movies, except if you listen to this podcast, then 3 of the 5 episodes we recorded so far, kids die in it.
This is true, but it hardly ever happens.
But in most other horror movies, in most other podcasts you listen to, it's kid death free. So there's a great callback before they go to the sewer when they lock the Blob inside the theater, and his jacket's caught, and his zipper won't come down. They set it up in the first scene when he's trying to zip up his jacket and he can't, and the mom pulls it up.
Yep.
That's great foreshadowing. Just great setup and payoff.
Yeah. Do we know where this is? Where their town is?
I don't think so. I don't think we're ever told.
She said it's an October night, right?
Yes.
That's why she wants him to wear his jacket, because it's like an October night.
Yeah, but it's unseasonably hot.
Because he was like, it's like boiling outside.
Yeah. So it's unseasonably hot. And that's what they've been saying. We haven't been getting any snow. It's been sputtering, blah, blah, blah. They talk about that in the dialogue. Meanwhile, while this is going on, Brian has his own little misadventure where he fixes his bike, runs into the army, and realizes that fake Morgan Freeman is bad. So basically he sees that the satellite has an American flag on it, and that this was man-made. And then
spoiler alert.
Yeah.
This is not just a rock from outer space. It's actually a satellite.
So then what's great is we get the third and final use of Swiss Army socket wrench when he gets held at gunpoint because he's figured out, and he uses it to bash the dude with. I was like, I wrote down there, Swiss Army socket wrench saves the day again. And then we get the payoff to him missing the jump earlier. He does it while he's getting shot at by the army.
Yeah.
And there's a cool little chase scene. Great production value on this chase scene, by the way. It's like turns into like a little action movie, and you're just like in it. You're like, yeah, you get those army guys. You beat them. And so he ends up in the sewer, basically because he hears them talking about it and finds out that they're going to there's this dramatic push in on Morgan Foman, and we push in on the doctor, and Dr. Meadows says they're expendable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then we realize how evil he is.
Yeah.
And so he goes to save him. He goes down the sewer drain. Then after the big climax, after the big battle with the Blob, where they run out, they're kind of caught. They're stuck. And Brian shows up and pulls her out. The brother climbs out of the grate, so he's free and safe. She can't fit through it. So Brian saves her, and there's this great... Guys, as cheesy as it is, I'm not going to lie, I love the image of them driving down that tunnel on the motorcycle.
Yeah.
Really?
Love it.
I liked it.
Yeah.
I like how he uses the sewer as like
a tunnel. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is pretty much what it is. But
Yeah, I love how he uses it to drive up around the Blob. Yeah, but I just love
attention in physics class.
I love the image of him riding down the sewer and her on the back, and they're kind of. I was like, yeah, thought it was a strong image.
Yeah, I was like, he could have at least warned her though that they were going up the wall, because I feel like if you're not prepared for something like that, it might not end very well.
Yes, I think the reason he doesn't tell her is for us, the viewer's sake. So that way we don't know exactly what he's doing, even though if you're intelligent, you put the pieces together and you're like, oh, he's going to ramp it up right around there.
Right.
But if you don't know, you're like, is he just going to ram it right into the blob? I mean, that's a way to do it. So then they run into one guy that survived their encounter with the blob, and he's like all messed up. His hand's all messed up, and he's carrying around a fucking rocket launcher on his back.
Like one does.
On his back.
That's Bill Moseley, right?
Yes, it's Bill Moseley.
I thought that was him.
Yes.
Shout out.
The best part of this, my favorite, just absolute part of this setup, is that they go down there with direct orders not to kill the blob, not to shoot the blob, but they go down with AK-47s and old boys carrying a rocket launcher.
Just in case.
I mean, I think you're carrying too much for this mission, but hey, whatever you got to do. So Meadows, of course, locks them in, all of them, all three of them, and puts the tire over top of it, and he sees the rocket launcher, Brian does, and he holds it out and fires it and blows up the truck, and it's so cool.
That was cool.
You guys dig that?
Yeah,
it was.
That was awesome.
Yeah, it's just 80s awesome. I felt like I was watching Commando for a minute. I was like, yeah. And we get the death of Dr. Meadows after they escape. There's a Mexican standoff between Brian, tough guy deputy, and Dr. Meadows. And eventually the blob appears, drags him down, and he comes up and you see him smash his face.
That's a great scene.
That was cool.
Yep.
It fills his helmet mask, his whole face just gets engulfed in pink goo.
It's so cool. Such a great visual, right? Just and then he breaks the gun when he pulls him down. He snaps the gun in half. He pulls him down with so much force.
The force in that is really cool.
Yeah.
The same. It's everything is just so rough. How
impactful.
do that?
Yeah. It feels real. Feels like there's actual physics to it.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what's missing on a lot of CG is it feels floaty and not like there's weight to it. So then we get this cool scene where the blob explodes from the ground.
Wait, but before that, they run over they're a bunch of hard asses, and they're shooting this thing in the sewer with a gun. After what you've just witnessed, I think a gun is probably not going to do much. And then they throw some explosives down there.
Yeah, they throw a mine down there.
Yeah.
And it's he's like,
yeah.
And then it starts to rumble, and he's like, I think you pissed it off.
Yeah.
And then boom, it comes out of the sewer. And I love, there's some fun little practical effects here. So the survivors there's people getting blobified, getting crushed by the blob. Reminds me of some Harryhausen stuff, because there's a lot of stop motion-y smashing and stuff going on.
Yeah.
And you see him getting gooified, you see him getting smashed. Meg ends up grabbing the preacher catches on fire.
Yeah.
And she puts him out with a fire extinguisher and then shoots it at the blob, and it recoils from the cold. So she's like, it's the cold, and they all run into the church or whatever, or the library. What is it, a library?
I think it's the town hall.
I just assume that any of these movies end in churches.
Yeah.
that's what this congregation point.
Well, this kind of does end in a church.
Kind of, I guess, technically. But so they're at this. They're in the town hall. They're locked in. They're trying to fight it off with the CO2, but they're running out of it. And Deputy Hardass gets it.
Yeah, he bites it.
What'd you guys think of his demise?
It couldn't have come sooner. Could have had. No, I actually really like how they did this because they bend him in half. Essentially, he gets sucked through like one of the holes in the door and just bent in half and right out the door. It was really good.
Yeah, they suck him in half. They bend him in half backwards.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Which I think I know how they did that one. But I did. I actually rewound this part again because like where Brian goes and what he gets, I was like, did I miss a reference? They did reference it in the very beginning of the movie.
Yes.
But
the
I
very
was,
beginning of the movie.
yeah, there was. It was so abrupt. This was actually one of the things that I put on my, not bad, but like I wish they would have had a callback to it before this because, you know, it takes a lot. Like I said, I rewound it just to make sure I didn't miss that like hint at, hey, we're gonna go back to this. He just takes off running.
Yeah, so they introduced at the beginning when we first meet Moss, and
Yeah.
he's talking about the snowblower and fixing it, and they have that dialogue how it's barely spitting snow, and then he pulls out 2 beers from inside the snowmaker and tosses one to Brian. So yeah, Brian runs off to get the snow maker and starts attacking the blob with it. Then for some reason, I didn't understand why he decided to run right into the blob. Did you guys understand that?
Nope. Because he definitely didn't know that she had an explosive that she was going to use. Or
No, it just he like is spraying it, and then he just like instead of stopping and spraying it and wait for it to come, he just runs right into it and it easily flips him over, of course.
Yeah.
And then he's trapped in there. So then Meg goes full badass mode on us, and she goes, grabs the dude. There's old boy laying there. He's like arm and stuff is like it's like arms acided off, melted off with acid, and she like pulls him up and he's sticking to the ground.
That was good.
Yeah, love that. And so she goes to blow up the thing, and she does like her cool line, and then goes to jump off, and she's stuck.
Like one does.
What did you think of this, Lydia?
Sorry, that firework.
I heard it.
That was a loud one. Yeah.
It just like totally threw me off. Yeah, I think that was a really cool scene. She like jumps up on the thing and like gets her foot hung up on it. It stressed me out so bad.
I knew that it's a great suspense scene, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is why you wear Velcro shoes.
Yeah, well, I guess. I mean, I knew what was going to happen, so the suspense wasn't. I was wondering how the suspense played to you since you hadn't seen it.
Yeah, no, it stressed me out. It was good suspense because I was like, get off of that thing.
I love the effect of when the blob is eating the truck.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can clearly see it's like a miniature that it's crushing, but it still just looks so cool. I love those effects. And so the explosion happens, and we're in the blob is into little tiny pieces, right? We forgot to mention earlier that the preacher, earlier in the movie, arrives at the diner after he sees the blob go underneath into the sewer. And he sees a piece of the blob in the freezer, and he puts it in a little container that he carries around. I guess for sugar. Like what the? I guess that's what he has, like a little.
Maybe
sugar
it's for
container.
his teeth, because he has false teeth. I'm sure.
Yeah. So he puts it in. So he puts the little pieces in there, and then we put a pin in that. And then
also in that scene is when you find out what the blob's Achilles heel is.
Yeah.
It's the only time in the movie you see it until the end when they call back to it.
Yeah. So they so we put a pin in that, and then it comes back at the end of the movie. So after the town is saved, the blob is in a bunch of little cubes. They say, what's the line they say? Basically, let's get this thing to the
ice house
before dawn. So I'm guessing they
falls.
Yeah, so I guess they're taking it all to the ice house, and I don't know what they're going to do with it after that. I'm assuming dispose of it somehow or keep it frozen, maybe call the army, whatever they got to do. We don't know. We just know that it's going to be frozen, so it's no longer an issue. So then we do like a cut, and it's like at least months later, if not a year or so later. And we're in this circus tent, and we get the preacher with he's got like a blacked out eye glass, and he's like got his burn marks. He's got like a mullet going on, and he's preaching hailfire and brimstone and shouting and all this stuff. And then this woman comes in and says, when's it coming? And he says,
soon. Did he say soon?
Yes.
And he holds up the little glass.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's unthawed and it's moving around.
Yes. Lydia, what did you think of this ending?
I thought it was crazy. Like, I did not expect that to be the end of this movie. The preacher character, I don't know. I still don't know how to feel about him. He's clearly, like, he was fine. Like, it was like just a preacher walking around, kind of strange, but I don't know very many preachers in my life, so I was like, I guess that's just how preachers are. But then he's like clearly like just like a comic book character all of a sudden.
Correct. I agree 100%. I feel like there's not enough motivation for that ending in that character turn.
Well, I think you had mentioned this maybe when you and I were talking, maybe at some point during this, but it seemed like they were setting up a sequel that never happened.
Correct. I
feel that way too.
Yeah, I feel like they needed a hook for a sequel. And so they engineered this whole plot with this preacher. That way they can keep the Blob alive for a sequel. But I don't think it's very well earned.
No.
And I don't think, frankly, it makes very much sense. And like you said, Lydia, it's kind of like a comic book villain out of nowhere, right?
Like, he looked cool. Like he could be in a second movie.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he definitely set up his character to be like creepy, and like he did look great. Like the makeup design on him and everything, he looked great. He looked like a comic book villain. But it's just like the tone is so like this movie has a fun tone. I mean, it's campy and fun throughout it, but it's also scary. It's scary and great practical effects. I think the tone is pitch perfect through the whole movie until the end. Then the ending, it's like they just didn't. I don't feel like they stuck the landing on the end. I feel like if the movie would have ended after the explosion and that, let's get this thing to the ice house and then credits rolled, it would have been better. I wouldn't have missed the main ending.
Which is how the old one, the original, ends.
Correct.
Well, they drop the crate of the Blob in Antarctica.
Yes.
Or somewhere.
Which is kind of what they're alluding to, I'm guessing, which is kind of probably what they do. But yeah, just kind of
like the I mean, just knowing what we know now with global warming, that's like a ticking time bomb. They did that one, but I agree. It seemed very lazy the way that they ended this movie. I do think that they laid the breadcrumbs throughout the movie. They really did. But it just felt less than stellar.
I feel like if they wanted to sequel bait, it would have been just as easy to have them clean up the town, and then you pan down, you zoom in, and there's one piece that they missed, and you just push in on that piece, and then you cut to black. Would have had the same effect, because then it would have just been like, oh, it's still out there. They didn't get all of it.
Or if you wanted to like move it to a different town, like a bird could have swooped down and like found a finger that was also like had part of the Blob attached to it.
Okay, now you're getting too crazy.
I feel like that's better than the ending that we got.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. They could have slightly alluded to it instead of going all crazy eyes with
crazy eyes. Crazy eyes.
I felt like I felt like it was like an inside joke that I missed.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah,
that's how I kind of felt. Just like, is he from like another movie, or like he was already a character in a different world?
I felt like it was kind of a critique of those kind of preachers, which I have no problem with. That if you want to do that commentary, that's great. But it doesn't feel like the right movie to do it in, and it just wasn't earned very well. It wasn't set up very well. Because
I
the
think
preacher, he's in like 3 scenes, isn't he?
yeah, he's not in very many scenes. I think for me, it's kind of like the only explanation I can come up with is that like the whole movie is kind of like the fear of like authority figures. So they just like make them all bad in their own ways. And then like, of course, it's kind of easy to make a preacher like a really scary character.
Well, especially a priest at that time.
Yeah.
Well, and where are we going to go with this?
Great insight.
From his perspective, right? So we get the science-based explanation that this was a bacteria that they had put on a satellite in space, and then the cosmic radiation mutated it fell to Earth, and then it turned into the blob, right? So from his perspective, because the whole movie, the scenes that he does have, he thinks that this is a biblical event. He feels like this is the rapture. And so, you know, if you take out any of the science-based explanation that you do get in this, from his perspective, he probably does think that this is a sign from God because it's just so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's illogical. I just don't think it's very well presented. Yeah, I think it's very.
I totally agree. I feel like it was really
not my favorite.
Well done.
Not my favorite.
Could have done better.
So, what do you guys think of the Blob? Let's give our pumpkin ratings, and we'll start with Derek this time. Derek,
give it a solid 8.03.
What is it with you and these decimals, for crying out loud?
I'm just kidding. I'm going to give it a solid 8. It was a really good movie. I had a lot of fun rewatching this movie. Tons of nostalgia. It just, from start to finish, minus 2 minutes. It was fantastic. I loved every minute of it.
Lydia, this was your first time watching this movie. How many pumpkins would you give it?
I think I'm going to give it a 7. I really enjoyed it though, but I feel like I'm going to take points off for the ending. But the effects were the effects and the actors and the direction of the movie were all really good.
Did you pull up the effects?
I did. I stopped looking because I realized I can't do 2 things at once.
I would like to give them a shout out.
Go ahead with your rating and I'll try to figure it out.
Okay. So I'm going to give the Blob, just like Derek, an 8 out of 10 pumpkins. I love this movie. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fun. I think it's scary when it needs to be scary. The practical effects are amazing. The performances are great. And I have a bunch of nostalgia for it as well. During my teen years, or my early 20s, I hadn't seen it in a while when I was in my 20s. And one day I just thought about it. I was like, man, I used to really like the 80s version of the Blob. Let me check that out again. And I watched it and then immediately was like, okay, now I've got this on DVD. And then when it came out on Blu-ray, I bought it for that. I've since then it's been one of my back pocket horror movies that if people have not seen, I'd say, here's one. Have you ever seen Chuck Russell's Blob? Because I think it's a good, solid recommend. Any notes that we missed or any other critiques that you have, Derek?
No, I feel like it was a very solid movie. I would recommend it.
Would you have wished that they made a sequel to this?
If done correctly, Yes, the way
Let's
they
say
set
that-
up the ending.
Let's
No.
say that Darabont and Russell returned. Would you want a sequel to this?
Yeah, I think that there's still a lot to do with the story that they had, but I would hope that they would having some insight into the ending of the movie, they change that direction. But I mean, yeah, I would definitely have wanted.
Yeah, I do too, but I think maybe we're better off not having one. Maybe it's better as a special one-off movie.
Yeah, I could definitely agree with that one as well.
Because it's definitely a great one. Lydia, did you find your?
Yeah. So shout outs to, let's see, Lyle Conway and Stuart Ziff. And Tony Gardner. Looks like they did most of
Of course, Tony Gardner did it. I knew that. I forgot. Yeah, this is one of Tony Gardner's movies. Who also, by the way, created the Chucky effect. He's the one that created Chucky.
Really?
Yep. Tony. Shout out. So yeah, that is the Blob. I'm going to give it a highly recommend as well. You guys recommend them to see it?
100%.
Definitely.
So keep an eye out for that one. If you guys have any questions or comments or things that we missed, be sure to drop it down either on the podcast links or on the YouTube channel, and we will answer those questions, of course. You can find us at Instagram at Scream Bloody Movies. You can find us on YouTube at Hyla Productions Scream Bloody Movies. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere that podcasts are available at Scream Bloody Movies. Let us know how you guys found us, and that way we know where you're from. Any last words, guys? I say last words like I'm going to kill you guys after we get off here. Any last words?
Cheese and pepperoni.
What do you want on your tombstone?
Yep.
Yeah. Remember those commercials? Jesus, criminy.
Yeah.
Well, if you have nothing else for Lydia Judy and Derek Lemaster, I'm Jamie Hiles, and remember, if you're going, let's try that again, reverse it. For Lydia Judy and Derek Lemaster, I'm Jamie Hiles, and if you're going to scream bloody
movies.
We will get this one day. Scream bloody movies. Good night, folks.